Hello fellow astrologers, welcome back to another edition of the Astrologers Keyring Fundamental Series. In this video, D6, Mars, the warrior, will be talking about how Mars affects your chart in astrology. We'll be touching a little bit on the subject itself, then going over some of these links to other topics that are related to it, and then we'll go over the chart details, telling you more about what they are and how they connect, including dignities, during which we'll show you how all that connects over here on the key ring. You can see we have things highlighted and what they are and what they were. When we go over it on the key ring, we'll finish up by talking about these keywords. So let's go ahead and read from the paragraph. Mars is the planet of action, willpower, and drive. It represents how we assert ourselves, pursue goals, and defend what we value. Mars governs physical energy, courage, desire, and competitiveness. In mythology, Mars was the god of war, and this fiery influence shows up in how we take initiative, express anger, or engage in conflict. Its placement in your chart reveals how you fight, how you pursue what you want, and how you express raw passion. A strong Mars brings confidence, focus, and tenacity, but when misused, it can lead to aggression, impatience, or recklessness. So Mars is quite clearly the opposite of Venus in that it is the initiator. It is how you project your energy, your strengths. It's how you fight, and it has a lot to do with your drive put together with your sun sign to find out some of your assertiveness. It also shows what you're compatible with when you're looking at Venus signs. When you connect these together, it shows how you're compatible in an intimate relationship. It can also symbolize how you connect in a professional relationship as well, especially if you have some good connections with Mercury. But it definitely shows how you assert yourself. So now let's talk about some of these interactive links. All of our pages have these. You'll see that there's words here that have particular topics that connect to the subject, like Mars. If you click on the link itself, it'll take you to a Google search that'll tell you more about what Google has to say, plus a number of links to other web pages that will tell you more about Mars. We'll actually click on this later. And if you click on the lettered and numbered link itself, it'll take you to the video where we go, just like this one, over the topic itself. Like this would bring you back to this video here, and these are other ones. So let's talk more about the chart details for Mars. Now, Mars is the last of the inner planets. It rotates every 2 years, so it only comes back on you only once every 2 years. Now, it can make other angles and cause some issues. Now, Mars also, one thing I didn't mention, Mars is the minor malefact and Venus is the minor benefact. The major ones are Saturn and Jupiter, and I'll talk more about that in Saturn and Jupiter. But they're the major benefacts and the malefacts. But Mars itself tends to, a lot of times, cause a little bit of trouble. Sometimes when it's conjunct, it's not really good to have Mars conjunct when you have a transit or something happening. Or depending on what planet it's making a conjunct to, it might not be good. It's great if it's Venus, but sometimes it's not great if Mars is conjunct like someone else's Saturn or something else like that. It could create a problem because Mars tends to sometimes ruffle feathers with pressing its will a little too hard. And this is the manner by which you do it. Whatever sign your Mars ends up being in flavors a lot of how that is. So let's move on. It symbolizes action, passion, aggression, and motivation. Its ruling signs are Aries, and it used to be the ruler of Scorpio. Now, interesting topic. It talked about it used to be Mars, the god of war. Well, now Scorpio used to be Athena, the goddess of wisdom in combat. So that's how they both shared that warrior thing together with Mars. Oh, so now let's continue on. The corresponding house is the first house. Now, Before planet Pluto was around, it used to be the 8th house as well. But, and as you see right here, we mapped that out. The gray over here shows you what it used to be here in the 8th house. This is the 8th house position in the chart. And over here is the 1st house, which is the ruler of Aries, and Scorpio is the ruler of the 8th house. You'll see that here where it talks about a water fixed sign for Scorpio. And what it used to rule right here was Mars, and now it rules Pluto. Over here, this is just Mars, and it's a fire cardinal sign, is Aries in the 1st house. And you'll see we have them highlighted here for connections, if you're interested in those as well. And let's not forget about these dignities over here. Now, dignities are something special to planets. I bring them up every time at the end. You can click here at D16 for a better understanding of what dignities are in general. But there's 2 signs that are usually good for every planet, and 2 signs that usually have challenges. So in the case of Mars, Mars is all the cardinal signs, and Mars is the ruler, and Capricorn is the exalted. So when you have a Capricorn Mars, you tend to have things working out a little bit better for you because Capricorn is great. Capricorn has similar energy where it's kind of assertive, but it takes a more logical approach instead of a more emotional approach, which is Aries with the fire being a projective fire. This is more like a receptive logic. So when you go over to that, every time you have a detriment, it's always opposed. Your detriment is always opposed what your ruler is, and your fall is always opposed your exaltation. It's always like that. And you'll find that more when you get to D16 when he talks about dignities. But in this case, you know, if you want to be assertive, Libra's more about like, let's just work it out. Let's just talk it out when it comes to the fight. They're the people that'll talk, not necessarily assert themselves in the fight. And sometimes that can be hard times because when somebody needs to stand up, maybe that's a hard time to overcome that. Cancer can be the other time where you try to be more sensitive. Well, this is not a time for you need to be like the hypersensitive or emotion person when you're trying to be assertive. That can be a little bit of issue, and it could be another thing that you might have to overcome. So it's just things to look at how the patterns can become a little bit of a obstacle where other ones just kind of sometimes could slide into opportunities. Now remember, opportunities can be taken for granted. You might take for granted that you have an Aries Mars and just never really appreciate that. And you don't ever actually go for anything challenging. You just let everything slide. Where these other people learn some great life lessons by overcoming some of their challenges that the Aries Mars may not. Let's go ahead and go back here and take a look at these keywords. As always, we like having a balanced approach when we give some of these keywords. We give the general ones, the positive traits, and negative traits, so you can see both sides. Now, remember also, you'll also see some that might be redundant from other ones because they may share some other qualities with each other, and that's the nature of astrology. So let's read about that. General traits: action, energy, willpower, anger, ambition, and desire. Positive traits: courageous, assertive, determined, energetic, passionate, focused, and motivated. Negative traits: aggressive, impatient, combative, impulsive, domineering, and harsh. That's a good collection of keywords to describe how Mars actually is. And you may have noticed that certain things like Aries or Scorpio may have shared some of these traits, but that's part of what astrology is. So that pretty much sums up what Mars the warrior is and how it affects things in astrology. Stay tuned for our next episode, D7, where we talk about Jupiter the Sage in our next progression of planets. We hope you have enjoyed this video from our Astrology Keyring series. If you like the content, please like, follow, and share with your friends. Thank you for watching, and have a blessed journey.